Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. So you know how this works, right? You send us something interesting, and we pick it apart and share our thoughts and go deep with you.
That's right.
And today we're going back in time
Yeah. Back in time with the twist.
with the twist. It's gonna be good.
I think so.
So you send us this list
Yes.
from the top10s.com, and it speculates which deceased celebrities would have disapproved of Donald Trump.
It's pretty interesting.
It is.
It's a very diverse list.
Yeah. What kind of people are we talking here?
Well, we've got musicians and actors and comedians and activists,
Wow.
all sorts.
Okay. So who are the top?
Yeah. Who are the top 10 names on this list?
Yeah.
We've got George Carlin, Tupac Shakur, Johnny Cash, Bruce Lee, Burt Lancaster, Frank Zappa,
Wow. Keep going.
John Lennon, Kurt Cobain, Lenny Bruce, and Robin Williams.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine that room?
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Just all those personalities.
Oh, yeah.
Even before we get into politics.
Definitely a clash of titans.
And it really makes you think, like, opinions about figures like Trump, it's not just one group.
It transcends boundaries, professional boundaries.
It really does, yeah.
So the source actually digs into why each of these individuals might have had some problems with Trump
Oh, really?
based on their known beliefs and actions.
Okay.
It's quite fascinating.
Let's get into it.
All right, let's jump in.
You were curious about George Carlin.
Oh, yes. Big fan of his work.
So let's start there.
Yeah, let's do it.
He built a career on skewering hypocrisy, especially like politicians.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially like politicians.
Yeah.
Just imagine Carlin riffing on Trump.
Oh, I can just picture it now.
Like that writes itself.
It does. It does. It's not hard to imagine Carlin just having a field day with Trump.
Right. Carlin's humor targeted those in power. He wasn't afraid to call anyone out.
Well,
So considering Trump's style and some of his controversial policies, Carlin would have had a field day.
yeah, he would have.
It's not hard to imagine.
Oh, okay. Moving on from a comedian, we go to a completely different world. We're talking Johnny Cash,
Okay.
the man in black,
Yeah.
champion of the underdog.
Yeah.
The list points out his advocacy from prisoners to indigenous communities.
Wow.
And this empathy he had would have definitely clashed with some of Trump's policies.
Oh, absolutely.
What's so cool about Johnny Cash is that he lived what he sang about.
Yeah, he did.
He didn't just sing about it.
No.
He performed at Folsom Prison. He fought for Native American rights.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very plausible that he would have found himself at odds
Yeah.
with some of Trump's actions and statements.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, switching gears again,
Okay.
we got Kurt Cobain.
Oh, yeah.
This one might surprise some people,
It might.
but the source claims Cobain would have been a vocal critic of Trump.
Really?
They cite his disdain for corporate greed
Yeah.
and his support for social justice.
Okay, I see it.
Yeah.
Think back to the early 90s.
Uh-huh.
Cobain, Nirvana, Voice of a Generation.
Rejecting corporate America, rejecting the establishment.
Yeah.
His music was raw,
Oh, yeah.
angry,
Uh-huh.
anti-establishment.
Ooh.
So given Trump's background,
Yeah.
I can totally see how Cobain might have seen him as the embodiment of everything he stood against.
Everything.
Yeah.
So we've got a comedian who took no prisoners, a country icon with a social conscience, and a grunge legend who bucked the system.
Three very different individuals,
Very different.
yet they all potentially could have united in their opposition to Trump.
Yeah, it's crazy how this transcends genres and generations.
It really does.
It really does, yeah.
But before we get too ahead of ourselves,
Yeah,
it's important to remember this list is speculative.
right.
We can't actually know
Yeah.
how these figures would have felt about Trump.
Yeah, it's all hypothetical.
Yeah, it's like trying to predict the weather weeks in advance. You can look at patterns, but you never know.
Right. You never really know.
There's always a chance of a surprise storm.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean this is pointless.
Of course not.
Like, it's more about starting a discussion.
Right. It's about sparking a conversation.
Yeah.
And I think it reflects our own need to make sense of the present by looking at the past.
How interesting.
It's like we're seeking guidance or validation from these icons,
Oh,
even though they're no longer with us.
Like, what would insert iconic figure do?
Exactly. And while we can't know for sure,
Uh,
we can look at their lives, their work, their values, and make an educated guess.
okay, so it's kind of like historical detective work.
Yeah, a bit like that.
But how do we avoid projecting our own biases?
That's where critical thinking comes in.
Okay.
We need to consider the context of their lives,
Uh-huh.
the social and political climates they lived in.
Right.
You know, we can't just slap a modern political label on them and call it a day.
Oh, definitely not.
It's more nuanced than that.
Much more.
Now, speaking of nuance,
Yeah.
You said you wanted to go beyond the top 10.
Oh, yeah.
And there's some pretty intriguing names further down.
Like who?
Well, Woody Guthrie.
Woody Guthrie.
Yeah. You mentioned him specifically.
Yeah, I'm curious about that one. I had no idea about the connection to Trump.
Well, apparently Guthrie wrote a song about Trump's father,
Really?
Fred,
Okay.
accusing him of discriminatory housing practices.
Wow. So the Trump family has been controversial for generations.
It seems that way.
Wow.
This connection to Woody Guthrie adds a whole new layer,
Oh, it really does.
showing how certain social and political issues can resonate across decades.
Absolutely.
And then there's Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, yeah. What about her?
The source suggests that her personal struggles might have made her unsympathetic to Trump.
Huh. That's interesting.
It is. It makes you think about how personal experience, especially with hardship and vulnerability, can shape your political views and your empathy for others.
Yeah, it's like there's a personal story behind every political stance.
Exactly.
Wow.
And then we have David Bowie,
Oh, yeah.
true chameleon challenging norms,
Hmm.
speaking out against racism and fascism.
Yeah, his inclusion brings up these like big issues that feel very relevant today.
Absolutely. And it's remarkable how these figures from the past can still spark such relevant conversations.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're participating in our modern debates,
Wow. Yeah.
even though they're gone.
Yeah.
And it just speaks to the enduring power of art and ideas.
It really does. Okay, so we've gone through this whole list, right? Imagining how these figures would have felt about Trump.
We have, yeah.
And it's really been a journey through their lives, their values.
It has.
But like, what does it all mean? Like for us, like sitting here listening to this, what's the takeaway?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that it challenges us to think critically about history
Okay.
and how we interpret it.
Okay.
You know, it's not just like a set of facts.
Nah.
It's an ongoing conversation.
Okay.
It's a dialogue.
I like that, yeah.
We're all a part of it.
It's like, what if we could actually hear these voices, like, engaging with today's problems?
Oh, that would be amazing.
Like, how much more would we understand?
Right. But we can't.
Yeah.
And I think that highlights the limitations of historical analysis.
Okay.
We only have what's left behind.
Right.
Writings, recordings, accounts from others.
Yeah.
And then we filter all of that through our own lens.
No, I see what you mean.
It's subjective.
Totally.
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
can never truly know how someone would think about the present.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to.
Yeah.
It sparks curiosity, makes us think differently, maybe even challenges our own assumptions.
I think so, too.
It's about making connections, exploring, and keeping that conversation alive.
Yeah, and I think this list, even though it is speculative, it really does remind us that history, it's not just some, like, dusty old book.
Yeah.
It's something that shapes how we see the world right now.
Absolutely.
Wow, well, this deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
I agree.
We've speculated, we've explored these interesting lives,
Yeah.
and we really got into the complexity of history.
Quite a journey.
What a ride. As a final thought for everyone listening out there,
Yeah.
I'd like to encourage you to think about how this could apply to other figures. And other issues you know. Like, what other voices from the past would you want to hear from today?
That's a good question.
And how would they make us see the world differently?
Think about that.
Yeah,
Those are questions worth thinking about.
they really are.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
Remember, there's always more to learn,
All
more
right.
connections to make,
Yes.
and more insights to uncover.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep exploring.